before we move on to the discussion, just to let you know that we have great feedback from partners who are hosting the live stream in Malta, in Oman, in Munich, and also some viewers from the United States. So they woke up and they are watching us.
That's great, wonderful. Right. That's wonderful, like talking also like about, let's say, maybe like global and globalization issues, because we have actually one question that relates to that. I don't want to say much about that. I think also like all contributors gave a lot of like, let's say, think food now, like we can start discussing those issues. Self-determined way of being active as a new definition, an anthropological actually shift on what work means. That's one thing. Maybe my question, does this relate to a totally different understanding of economy as it stands right now? Does it imply also another shift in how we understand economy? Maybe just to begin the discussion between all of you, please. Yeah.
This is the implication. But for my point, it's of absolute no interest. That means sometimes strange, because I'm coming from how do we work? And if we change this really, we have to change the economy. And for sure, where could we change economy? Only in very small local things like alternative currencies, exchange, sharing. It's always on small scale, but you make like this. It could get bigger, and then for sure it's a really very important question, but it's not my, let's say, my point of view on the things.
Mm-hmm. Well, may I put another question also, because we received that? Mm-hmm. And that relates actually to, let's say, open source software and general, actually, the new culture that belongs to that. It's a very interesting question, saying that on the one hand, the free and open source software movement is inspirational and innovative in different fields. It gives also an example. But on the other hand, there might be a risk of creating a collective memory that maybe relates also to what Giovanni said, without taking into account parts of the world with internet accessibility issues. So this is like, maybe we can open it up and say that, are there probably differences between Europe, or a kind of more like a Eurocentric point of view, and a global point of view?
No.
Please.
No, I don't think so. I mean, if you look at what's called the maker movement, or let's say open source / free software movement, that's very strong in many parts of the world. And especially if it comes to making things and having workshops and deal with open hardware, it's in a way back from the purely digital to the tangible. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, I know from, for instance, the Fab Lab in Ghana or several ones in South Africa who make really interesting stuff according to the needs they have there. Mm. But of course, I know that connectivity is still an issue. I mean, but it is still even in industrialized countries for some rural population. But I think we should not underestimate the younger generations in Africa or elsewhere.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. We shouldn't underestimate the system D, the informal work. Mm-hmm. That's also my point, coming from thinking on work, that it's a total different system. If you have in Nigeria, 80% of the income is informal. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Nobody pay taxes. Or then you have a total different system of how they are organized, which partly is also very interesting. You can learn things from.
I would like also to ask something, because I have just also completed a proposition, and I had to deal with all those, let's say, bureaucratic issues that Max talked about. So all the issues about like resilience and impact and all the the things that might be very difficult to deal with, especially when you're dealing with issues of, let's say, culture. I believe maybe we would like to expand a little bit about, because I had the feeling that you talked about a kind of like circular quasi-argument, that we don't have enough time actually to think creatively when we are using our time for already existing processes, being that bureaucratic, being that managerial, in the strict sense of what management is. There are, of course, other understandings of management. And because I think that relates also a little bit to the issue of time, as this understanding of, time which is available to us as individual, as also as collectives. And the question is like, maybe this anthropological shift that we are talking about has to do also with a different understanding of time and usage of time, being that more affective and effective. Too difficult?
That leads to a point, maybe, in a way.
Please, Giovanni.
No, yes, it's quite difficult.
Well, I
Actually,
mean, it's like
well, my experience, my knowledge is much more related to retail, which is experiencing a huge transformation because of the m-commerce and the e-commerce. So this is an age of dematerialization of the goods in retail, and brands are aiming to create, to design experiences and to sell experiences, to involve people and to drive sales to or from other channels. So yes, it is also a matter of time and resources. Time is one of the main resources. Gaining time and attention of people, and occupying this time, well, it's a huge bet for the future, I believe. I don't know really whether the future will be like without work. Well, I have quite an apocalyptical perspective, because I cannot see any room for really a radical point of view within this society which tries to be enlightened somehow, liberal, and the fact this dematerialization of work, or this disappearance of work and the informalization of economy has a huge impact of taxation and democracy too, because of course democracy lives on taxation and on representation. So I don't know, so we are quite mature, I would say, but I don't know what people in his 20s could look at the future, or being an antagonist, or be integrated in some illuminated public framework for expressing his creativeness.
Yeah, if we talk on time, I would like to use another term, the flow. That means the situation where you forget time because you are so deep in the thing you are doing. And for me, it's if I'm talking about end of separation, or bringing things a little bit more together, and about collective work, I talk about, in the end, about intensity of work, intensity of losing time. And I'm in a way quite naive. I see the apocalyptic way of looking on the world, but I think we were all childs, and we were all in that flow. We have to learn and to work on that, and there is a lot in between. And at that point, I'm not naive. I know that there is a lot in between, but it's also coming back to something we had.
To say something of that, and maybe combine what you said earlier, the issue of flow can be linked also to this understanding of play, right? Something that you have discussed earlier. When we like what we do, when we are in this moment of like playing, actually, time doesn't exist as a measurable unity. It's more about flow. And of course, the other aspect is like when we talk about, artists, we always say, well, artists, they do actually what they like, so why should they get paid? One of the very interesting issues that, so they are in this intensity of flow, let's say. So this should not be linked to a kind of like standard understanding of, financing. Anyway, but I believe maybe this understanding of flow and play leads us also to a linking there between what an artist is or what an artist can be in relation to this novel understanding of a society, probably a society to come. That might mean also a totally different understanding also of time. I'm using a lot the word time because this actually means, what time is labor. Labor is time. That's a link there. And this is a financial means to actually make the link between them. That's a classic Marxist understanding of labor. Great. So maybe it has to do with a totally different understanding of both time in terms of intensity that Marx brought into discussion and also, let's say, creative work. It's a little bit more of an effort like to sum up what we discussed up to now. Definitely we'll have also the time to discuss more about those issues also in the next session, which will be tomorrow, and tackles exactly from a different point of view this understanding of labor, work from an economic and a political point of view.
Are there any questions from our audience here?
Christos, please.
Can I ask a question to Giovanni? How successful was your project
That's a good one.
financially for the company, for the brand?
Well,
If you can.
Yes. I can say something. I had the privilege of working in an experimental project which was endorsed by the owner of the company. So this was really a privilege because we had a lot of resources and we had really not tight constraint. The success was huge in terms of return on experience. In terms of return on investment must be seen on a longer perspective. So you must be bright enough to consider this as an investment for the future. This is why it lasted 3 years. Well, it was designed to last 3 years only because it was experimental. Most brilliant brands are doing something similar or much more advanced projects. They have the energy, the strength to really look ahead and be pioneer and trial and make mistakes. Of course, you need resources, something that only an industry, a brand may have. To do it in the public realm would be totally different. Of course, should be totally different.
Thank you.
Oh, Philip. Yeah, I want to ask. You need to come here.
Thank you. Because we were talking about LABattoir as a kind of issue we are looking at today about work, innovative work. And maybe we can also compare the LABattoir and the Fab Lab in St. Pauli and maybe also see the differences. Because in this presentation you gave, it looked kind of very ready, finished. And the pictures I saw in Fab Lab were kind of more like a hobby keller. I don't know in English, like the way you can work. And the LABattoir looked really kind of, also the gestures I saw with the kind of the opening gestures with the champagne and so on. It's very different spatially. Oh, it was Uso. Okay, we drank it also last night. No, but I'm just asking, like, how defined has a space to be open, also to be accommodated, and also give ownership to others to take it over and to use it as a working space. And that would be my questions, like, who can work in the LABattoir, who is, and under which conditions, and is it possible for the participant to take over the space, to make it their own, even if it's temporary. That's how I see also maybe a bit more the Fab Lab, which is maybe based on membership, so everyone has a share in it. So that's a question, because you also, as a municipality with Artbox and the kind of coalition, made the space. And that would be, I think, this kind of ownership question will be important.
That's interesting.
So that's my question.
Yes,
like,
please.
who has the ownership?
Would you like to answer?
No, I just want. Okay. Okay. Surely there is still some room. Auf Deutsch würde man sagen, Luft nach oben. So to make the Fab Lab in St. Pauli a bit more in order. But I know from people who come there the first time that they like it. It's a bit chaotic and anarchist. It was not meant to be like that. It's just how it works. Actually, it's a Verein in German, association, so it belongs to the members. But in a way, this is, for me, the state I'd prefer. I have always problems with this start-up and innovation discourse. And I see that if we talk about the maker movement, there is already a separate framing coming from Silicon Valley. Chris Anderson wrote that in his book, Makers. This is the third wave after New Economy in Web 2.0. I don't like that. So in a way, actually the Fab Lab is in all its chaotic state, much closer to the art world. Actually, our neighbors in the hall are lots of artists, and sometimes you can't even distinguish where does the Fab Lab stop and where is the next artist workplace. And but this is a very difficult and very important question. If you start something new like the LABattoir, in case you do not want it to look in the startup aesthetics, what do you have to do to make it, give it a feel of more openness? Yeah?
Max or I just want to say that first of all, it's not a typical answer. It goes to details, but anyway, you will understand what I'm trying to say. The whole setting with the catering, it was a sponsoring from the neighboring hotel. And this is crucial because when we went there, we started discussing with the neighboring companies and offices and all that. And they came to us to ask what we are planning to do. Because as you understand, it was very important for them that something new is happening. So they offered that, and it was very luxurious for our standards too, but we don't care if we don't pay for it. But the thing is that it's an initiative by the Municipality of Thessaloniki. So we can't pretend that it's a bottom-up. Of course, this doesn't mean that it doesn't reflect what the society needs. That's why we are writing there that it reflects the needs of the society. First the neighborhood, but the needs of Thessaloniki in general. So I don't want to be trapped in certain models or certain images, but just to do things in the right way. And now the question is, what is the right way? I think it's in our text. I regard that the right way is that we are collaborating with young people to produce this through Media Lab, that we include HyperWerk, that they have experience in that, and also we are open to all the young initiatives and collectives in the area and in Thessaloniki. They were invited for the very first opening that we had. I'm sure that Eli wants to add something to that.
Max wanted to say something on that.
Yes.
Eli, please.
I think the question is of total importance. But first I think we have to forget the spatial and organizational situation. We have to see this thing like an open soccer field and not like with walls. And then we have to start to build up the containers or whatsoever inside of this soccer field. We can't else, because it's EU funded, it's still not allowed for another 8 years or I don't know, to just one screw in the wall. So imagine, you have a nice situation, but in a way also positive. It's a field. There are no walls. For sure there are walls. And the second thing is the organization, and that is for me quite more difficult because autonomy is necessary for working there. For the people working there, they need some autonomy. And at the same time, we have a top-down organization of it. And we can't say, oh, like with the walls in the spatial, I think it's much easier in the organization. We can't do like this. There is no top-down, there is no top-down. Because we know it's EU-funded, the municipality, and also the hope for new jobs and whatsoever. And that's for sure something we have to search new ways of organization. Because without autonomy, we will fail. That's clear.
Ellie, please, yeah.
Από θέση και από χαρακτήρα και από ιδεολογία θα μπορούσα να πω ότι...
Please.
He needs to get his headphones to understand what you're saying.
Ellie, please.
My character, my ideology, and my own personal stance, I could say that all of the Fab Labs examples are examples that I agree with, and I think that it's a major thing that such things can happen. However, given my other hat, my other capacity within the municipality, I'll say that in each and every way we will try to not be an obstacle in having such units that are going to originate directly from our citizens. To a greater or lesser extent, this is something that we are searching for. However, there's a difference between your city and Thessaloniki. The culture is different, the mindset is different. What an active citizen does there and what civil society does there is also different. And given the crisis, civil society and active citizenship have taken a blow. So what we're trying to do in LABattoir is not embrace a top-down approach. What the municipality wants to do is to provide the context, and we've discussed that time and again. And we want to engage everybody, such as the State Museum of Thessaloniki, for example. But we also have members that are actually groups of people. So what we want to do is provide financial support so that these premises will be there, and gradually we want to provide the right set of circumstances in order for these teams of people, these small groups of people to work together and become aware of what they can do to hold their own things outside LABattoir. And maybe this is going to be something that's going to be necessary for some of these people. Maybe right now some things are being imposed on them, but this is not what we want to have in the future. So necessarily there are some constraints, but these are not directly relevant to the project. It's just the things that we need, quote unquote, for us to be able to operate in that given area. As far as the municipality is concerned, this is a major bet, and the municipality does not want to be there as manager. We don't want to be there and dictate things to people. We just want to be a facilitator for the processes that are going to take place with regard to everyone that's involved. For example, Eric Ellingson and the school that was set up there in the summer, where everybody, all those people participated.
Add something, Max?
Just a very short thing. Here is research as first part of the whole loops, and it's exactly about this thing. How do we start? How do we network? And that we get a group of people who are able to be autonomous and to be within this system which, as you have explained, is willing to give autonomy. But still, what I mentioned before, we have the top-down. It was just to say, we can't say that's not here. What we could say is, okay, we try our best and we find new ways of. And that's the first phase which we have to take our time. For sure, we have the pressure to go fast. But I think that needs its time.
I believe that actually, with the discussion you gave also a kind of like answer to my first question before the session. I asked like, can we reconcile like existing economies with alternative economies, or like existing institutional politics with, let's say, alternative non-institutional politics? Well, I have the feeling that we are, at least in the discussion here, working towards that goal. And I hope also that, because I'm involved in that, that LABattoir also would be also an important, hopefully, and a good practice example to be set. If we don't have other, let's say, pressing issues here to discuss, maybe we can stop for today, because I would like also to thank very much also for their time, all the great team that technically has supported that with a lot of efforts. I would like also to thank all of the people, all of our friends that are here and participating into this discussion. And I give also the to Lydia for the closing remarks, the podium.
Just very short remark. The right way is also relevant. It depends on the circumstances. And what LABattoir has so far shown is that it's flexible and it can collaborate with an area of different institutional and non-institutional partners. And I think that this flexibility is what characterizes most of the examples that we saw here today. They adapt to the local circumstances and they build on the feedback they get from the different communities they work with. Even the more corporate Benetton initiatives. So I would also like to thank everyone for today. You've been all great with your time and the great team doing the live stream. We only had like 2 or 3 minimum, very small sound problems with the live stream. And have a nice evening, and we'll see you tomorrow. We begin at 12 o'clock. Let me check. Yes, 12 o'clock on the dot. Thank you very much.
Thank you, guys.